Alright, so this is one of our last videos on embellishment, right? So today I got a little example drawn out for you guys over the four chords that we've been studying for a little bit. So what I'm going to do is we're going to play through this, and then afterwards we're gonna analyze this we're gonna look around for all the things that we've been studying so far. Alright, so here we go. Let's try this. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so there's the example. I definitely should have recorded that piano to a metronome, but you get the idea of what we were sounding like there. So now let's get right into checking this out, analyzing it through a little bit. So let me get my pen. Okay, so let's start off with going through this. Basically, there are different ways to go through analyzing something like this. What I like to do is I like to pick out all like where the chord tones and guide tones are, right, in this line. Just so you know, I did not improvise this line. I wrote it out, kind of like academically wrote it. There is merit to that. I could have improvised something and then transcribed it. That would have been an interesting thing for you guys to see. But today I just wrote this one out because I had a Saturday night gig, and there was like a tune or two that were kind of bothering me a little bit. I wasn't feeling too comfortable on them. So what did I do with my Sunday? I wrote out 10 choruses on each of those tunes. All right, just composed a bunch of choruses over that to work out some ideas and really dive into those changes. And now when I improvise over them, I am starting to feel a little more confident. But I have those choruses that I wrote out, to go over a couple times. That's a lot of material for me to be working through. And then when I take it to the bandstand, I'm 100% confident that I'm going to feel more comfortable than I was on those songs. So anyway, let's get down to this. So basically I've been in the writing mode, so I figured I'd write this for you guys. So let's check out this A minor 7. We're going to start here. Let's pick out all the chord tones here. So this A, this is a chord tone. I'm highlighting all the chord tones in blue here. A, C natural, E, G. Well, and this G is tied over. Would you look at that? Here, we're just arpeggiating the chord here. This is every single one of these is chord tone. So we label these are chordal skips, right? So let's just put a CT there. These are all chordal skips, okay? If you check out, we got an A up top here. That is also part of the chord. That's another chordal skip going from that G to that A. I know it's only a whole step, but that's where our flat 7 meets our root. Okay, let's move on. Let's see. We got an F sharp here on the D7. That is most certainly a chord tone. That is our third. So I'm going to highlight all these in blue. This A is the 5th. Let's see, we got another F sharp here. We got another F sharp here, the beginning and the end of the triplet. Okay, those are all chord tones. Let's check out our G major 7. It starts on the tonic. That's a G right there. Here, I'll do all these stems too, so we can really get the whole thing nice and highlighted. So the B here is our third. G is our tonic again, an octave lower than the last one. We got another B right here. We got a D is our 5th. There's a lot of chord tones. We're playing a lot of chord tones here. Let's check out our last measure, C major 7. We got an E here. D, and then we got E here, these two E's in the end that are held through. These are all our chord tones. So if you look through this, The majority of these licks are all chord tones. All right, so that just emphasizes how important it is to be studying your chord spellings. Because you're going to be utilizing these chord tones and guide tones so much throughout all these solos. So let's jump in and let's start talking about some non-chord tones here. We could start with the A minor 7. This right here appears to be inside this triplet. Kind of interesting. Oh, we didn't get this. This is a chord tone right here. This G, missed it. I can do that line a little better. So, or maybe not. Okay, so that G is also a chord tone. That's our flat 7. So right here, what we are leaping down and then coming back to another chord tone. We're leaping down from a chord tone past the next chord tone and then coming back to it by step. So when we leap to the outside, we step back inside. We resolve inwards, right? This is an appoggiatura, right? So here is this F sharp right here is an appoggiatura. Let's label that APP. There's an appoggiatura right there. Okay. Now this G, we've seen this before. We've seen it in the lower octave during our examples. This G is the 7th. It's the flat 7, and then it turns into our 4th, right? In which our 4th resolves down, and that 4th now has a lot of tension on it. So this is actually a suspension. So let's write sus there. Okay, this is where the tension is being held in here. It's glowing green because it's radioactive. It looks kind of like Christmas now. Anyway, so there's a suspension. We're moving into another chord tone here. We got another chord tone up top. We're moving down here. This G, the G between our A and F sharp. What do we call that? That is one of the first non-chord tones we learned. This is just a passing tone, a little PT, right? And now we have F sharp going to E, going back to F sharp. And we could call this one, right? When we are on a chord tone, we are leaving the chord tone, going to somebody's house, and then coming back again, back to our house. This is a neighbor tone, and this is our lower neighbor, all right? So our lower neighbor tone right here. Cool. And now skipping out to this next measure, we're moving. This is a nice resolution. I just want to point that out. This F sharp moving to the tonic is like a leading tone resolution that you might see in like a retardation or something like that, even though this isn't a retardation because we're not moving it through to the next chord. We're not holding it through. But this F sharp right here in the last note of the D7 moving to the G tonic of G major 7. It's a nice use of resolving a guide tone, right, to our tonic. And then we chordal skip down. That's a large skip, but we'll take it. Yeah, so that's a chordal skip down to a B. Another chordal skip down to our G. Moving from G to the B, we have an A in between, and when we have something just in between, kind of bridging the gap between chord tones, we call this our passing tone. So let's throw PT in there. Okay, we got another chordal skip, and that leads into a stepwise motion into another chord tone, right? And now this F sharp to D to E, if you were kind of just looking at this, you might start thinking escape tone because you're moving away by a step and then coming back in by a leap. But what you should notice is that when you leap back in, that's not a chord tone that you're leaping to. That D is not part of C major 7. It's not a chord tone. It's a diatonic non-chord tone. So what we actually have here, if you look at the entire picture here, including the E at the end, what we have is we're going to our neighbors right here, right? So this right here, this F sharp, F sharp's going to sound real nice, I think. It's the sharp 11 over this. We typically treat this as Lydian, this 4 chord. Down to this D, and then we're heading back up to the E. So what this is this is our neighbor group, a group of neighbor tones, right? And this is a up down neighbor group. We have a upper neighbor tone. Upper, that looks like a W. Upper neighbor tone. I'm going to get better at writing on this, I promise. Upper neighbor tone, lower neighbor tone, and together they make a neighbor grouping. All right, and then we resolve to our third. All right. So this was just an example of some of the things that we can use in here. So in just these 4 bars alone, we utilized many chord tones and guide tones, right? And we used a bunch of non-chord tone embellishments that we've learned just within 4 measures. Do you know how many blocks of 4 measures you're going to play on a gig? Hundreds, probably. So anyway, this is let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We used 5 different non-chord tones here. 5 different non-chord tones. So I just said the same thing 2 times in a row. Anyway, we use the appoggiatura, we use the suspension, we use a passing tone, lower neighbor, we use another passing tone, we have upper neighbor, then lower neighbor, creating a neighbor group. Right? So all of these different things, you know, you might be looking at this and saying, well, how am I supposed to come up with all this on the spot? Well, you write out choruses like this. The more you write out choruses like this, and play through them fluidly in time, the more you're going to be able to pull these off during a gig while you're improvising, right? So maybe I know this example is jam-packed with different ideas, but maybe as you're going through your first chorus, you're thinking, all right, you know, let me focus on nailing a suspension. I'm going to play mostly chord tones, and let me make sure that I nail a suspension, right? Mostly chord tones and diatonic scalar things, right? And just focus on the suspension, because when you start doing diatonic things, that's where the passing tones are just going to come, right? Like if you're on A minor 7 and you know your chord tones and you know your matching scale is A Dorian. If you're making an A Dorian run, for example, A B C D E, right? Your B and your D are passing tones in there, right? So you already got the passing tones covered. Focus on making suspensions. Focus on making appoggiaturas. This is going to change the shape, the contour of your line to give it a little more of an interesting thing. Also, if you remember back to our example, I think it was our neighbor tone example, we talked a little bit about sequences. Try to sequence a couple things. It's pretty easy to start making sequences when you focus on using one type of non-chord tone, like the neighbor tone. If you say, okay, well, I'm going to start on the 7th, and I'm going to play a neighbor tone, upper neighbor tone, come back, and then I'm going to do it again on the 5th. I'm going to do upper neighbor tone, come down. Then I'm going to try the 3rd. Then I'm going to try the root, right? So I think there's a lot more practice that has to go into this, myself included, for sure. But I think this is a good start. And I'm going to drop my email in the description if anyone wants to send me an email, wants further explanation on this. I know a lot of this was very crash course stuff. And yeah, so if you got any questions, just let me know. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure. And this has been our series on embellishments. All right, so anyway, have a good one.